Hollywood has painted this fantasy for decades, showing sea wolves dining like medieval kings with endless abundance and royal treatment.
But here's the brutal reality that'll shatter every romantic pirate banquet you've ever imagined, completely and forever.
Too many hungry mouths and far too little food, while tropical heat turned precious supplies rotten before they could be consumed. But their food stores were designed for maybe 50 sailors on normal merchant voyages only, not the massive crews that successful piracy attracted. If crews couldn't stretch crumbs into actual meals, mutiny would eat through ranks faster than hunger, with violence erupting over empty stomachs. But then the quartermaster would appear with his measuring ladle, and daily miracles would begin as he somehow made... Feeding pirate crews meant solving equations that would challenge modern military logistics experts completely. Every scrap had to be carefully weighed, meticulously logged, and distributed according to strict schedules. The goal wasn't comfort or satisfaction knit. It was delivering just enough calories for essential work. Luxury was survival. Keep sails hauled, ropes tied, and cannons loaded when Spanish treasure ships appeared on horizons. One wasted sack of flour meant an entire week without adequate food for anyone aboard. So every single ounce had to somehow multiply into portions, sustaining back-breaking labor under sun.
Pirates learned thinking like military quartermasters, calculating exactly how many days of supplies could last.
The mathematics were unforgiving, too generous early, and crews would starve before reaching port safely. Too stingy, and weakened men couldn't handle the physical demands of sailing, fighting, and surviving. The food keeping pirates alive would make modern diners run screaming from tables.
Ship's biscuit arrived peppered with weevils that turned bread into moving, writhing masses of worms.
Their drinking water developed suspicious green tang, suggesting things were growing that shouldn't be consumed. Men made desperate jokes about squirming creatures being extra protein sent by Providence for strength. Then quietly tap biscuits over tin plates to shake out larger crawlers before biting down. Stomachs cramped constantly from malnutrition and contaminated food, while tempers frayed like old rope entirely.
When men started collapsing from weakness or fighting over moldy scraps, cooks knew transformation was needed.
The challenge was turning flour bricks and rotting meat into meals feeding dozens of desperate men. The foundation of pirate mass feeding was the great communal stew kettle, massive iron cauldrons that became the beating heart of ship survival. Smart cooks learned creating burgoo, lobscouse, and peas porridge that transformed individual rations.
The process started with rock-hard ship's biscuits soaked until it broke down into edible mush.
Then pounding it with available tools to create thick bases, stretching small meat amounts into portions. Bones were boiled multiple times, extracting every nutrition drop. Fat carefully skimmed and saved for cooking. Patience. Every ladle full tasted like liquid hope to men surviving on dry crusts and contaminated water.
This communal cooking meant 30 individual servings could become 50 portions when properly combined and prepared.
The psychological effect was as important as nutritional benefit. Men felt like sharing proper meals. Angelids. But storms and rough weather could kill cooking fires, leaving crews facing mathematical hunger reality.
Experienced ship's cooks became masters of culinary sleight of hand, learning dozens of multiplication techniques for satisfaction. They'd thicken communal stews with biscuit meal, pea mash, or precious barley, transforming watery broths
into thick porridges that stuck to ribs and provided lasting energy for hard physical labor. Real magic happened when finishing dishes with meat drippings carefully saved from previous cooking sessions, adding concentrated flavor that tricked hungry minds into thinking they ate much richer food than reality. The psychologists. On lucky days, cooks might steam duff, biscuit pudding combining flour, fat, and sweeteners,
into dense, calorie-rich desserts that could make one pot serve 4 messes instead of 2.
Upgrades. These tiny upgrades changed nothing about fundamental shortages, while simultaneously changing everything about crew morale.
Men who felt they'd had proper meals could work harder and longer than those feeling cheated.
But even cleverest cooking tricks couldn't solve the basic problem that protein remained desperately scarce. When stored provisions ran low, smart crews turned the ocean itself into hunting grounds and grocery stores. Ships, deploying hand lines, trolling hooks, seine nets, and improvised bait buckets to supplement dwindling food supply. Flying fish would land on deck during night watches, providing unexpected protein for communal stasis. Dawn brought opportunities catching dorado and surface fish, while shallow shoals offered sea turtle chances.
On desperate occasions, even seabirds became fair game, when hunger made men willing to eat anything.
Fresh catch could transform feeding mathematics of it. 30 thin stew bowls became 50 portions with fish.
The system worked beautifully when weather cooperated and fish were plentiful in surrounding waters.
Celeste. But when storms prevented fishing and luck ran dry, pirates needed more aggressive food acquisition methods.
Pirates understood the fastest way solving food shortage was taking what merchant vessels carried aboard.
Barrels of salt beef, dried fish, sacks of peas and flour, and precious molasses, transforming ships. Sometimes acquisition happened through peaceful barter, but more often involved boarding with cutlasses drawn threateningly. Smartest pirate captains learned seizing food provisions first and worrying about gold and silver second. True leadership meant
Because hungry crews could mutiny and sink ships faster than enemy broadsides could hole hulls.
successful raids might yield enough supplies feeding crews for months, transforming desperate men into sailors. But stolen food presented the same storage and preservation challenges as legitimately acquired supplies required constantly.
The unglamorous secret behind successfully feeding large crews was treating food storage like military science.
Survivalious. Requiring constant attention and systematic approaches, most people would find incredibly boring and tedious work. Supplies had to be stowed in coolest, darkest ship parts, with barrels positioned off bilge, where contaminated water could seep through wooden staves and ruin weeks of carefully preserved food. Sacks of flour and grain needed regular airing and rotation on strict oldest first systems. Disciplined inventory preventing supplies from sitting too long and developing spoilage spreading through entire storage areas. Systematic rotation created fire breaks against contamination. Daily inspections involved sniffing and knocking on casks to detect early contamination signs before spreading. Even simple cloth over breadroom doorways could prevent rats from turning rations into crumbs. Leaks. This boring, methodical work actually fed hundreds of men successfully over long voyages at sea. When hungry, desperate men were surrounded by limited supplies, meaning the difference between survival and death.
Pirate articles included provisions promising equal victuals, making food theft crimes against entire communities.
The quartermaster guarded breadroom keys, like protecting the ship's most valuable treasure aboard, completely. Ship's cooks and coopers became VIPs, whose expertise could keep everyone alive when supplies ran low. Anyone caught stealing from communal stores wasn't just crossing captain's authority, they betrayed everyone. This enforced fairness kept knives sheathed and prevented violent disputes tearing crews apart during scarcity.
Picture the nightmare. Massive waves slam galley as evening meals are ready, sending kettles tipping. While a week's worth of carefully prepared food threatens spilling across deck into wooden planks. 7 days of
Emergency response had to be immediate and flawless when catastrophe struck without any warning signs. Practice drills became automatic. Brace against movement, slam lids, scoop back salvageable food immediately.
Thicken remaining portions with emergency biscuit meal and stretch everything with precious molasses for feeding.
Patience. Crews would eat that night sote. Portions might be thinner, but stomachs wouldn't be completely empty. Success was measured. Feeding large crews required psychological strategies, making inadequate food feel more satisfying and substantial than reality.
Smart crews developed elaborate mealtime rituals, including group songs and storytelling competitions and for extra rations.
Experienced pirates learned spacing bites slowly, saving grog rations until meal ends for fullness feelings. These mental disciplines turned inadequate crumbs into work capacity, and capacity translated into which meant reaching ports where fresh supplies could refill stores and transform their survival situations completely. In the end, pirates learned successfully feeding hundreds with minimal resources wasn't about luck or abundance. It was developing comprehensive systems that could multiply small food amounts through communal cooking kettles. Smart thickening techniques, supplementing with ocean catch, acquiring provisions through raids and careful trading agreements. Maintaining proper storage conditions and enforcing fair distribution that kept desperate men from turning against each other. When you had little food and many hungry hands, careful craftsmanship beat wishful thinking. While discipline and systematic approaches conquered fear and desperation more effectively than individual heroics ever could. The greatest chef wasn't one creating elaborate banquets from abundant ingredients available in port kitchens.
It was the cook who could somehow feed tomorrow's crew using today's crumbs and hope.
Keeping everyone alive long enough to see another port where the whole desperate cycle began again.